The Bruins displayed the wrong kind of fight in Tuesday's loss to the Winnipeg Jets.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Thursday, December 12th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. It's free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And before we get started discussing the fallout from the other night's game against the Winnipeg Jets, we'll also preview tonight's Seattle Kraken game and offer some news and notes to end the show. Before all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. I am a lifelong Boston Bruins fan. I've been following this team, covering this team for various outlets for about 20 years now. Was a full-time hockey news editor at The Score for 5 years and have been hosting this podcast since 2019. And much has been made over the past couple of days about the fight that the Bruins displayed in a very lopsided loss to the Winnipeg Jets on Tuesday. The Bruins were down 6-1 when Trent Frederic dropped David Gustafsson with a single punch. And there's been many articles shared, particularly by Ken Campbell of the Hockey News, who kind of called Trent Frederic out for what was a very lopsided fight. And the fact that Gustafsson, I don't believe, had ever dropped the gloves at the NHL level, if even before that. Frederic has 38 recorded fights. He's an inch taller, 24 pounds heavier than Gustafsson. Why would Trent Frederic drop the gloves and take this guy out? Why choose him to fight? And it's a very potentially dangerous situation. Gustafsson was taken off the ice, did not return, in concussion protocol, etc. Now, according to Frederic, and this is per Fluto Shinzawa of The Athletic, it was Gustafsson who challenged him to a fight, which is somewhat curious because of the fact, again, Gustafsson has not fought before at the NHL level. The Jets are winning 6-1. What purpose would it serve for Gustafsson to challenge a bigger, heavier Trent Frederic to a fight? Frederic said, quote, "I would have to argue that he was the one that asked me. I wasn't expecting it." And that's what he said to Fluto Shinzawa. He said, "We just went to take a face-off." Frederic said he didn't like how Gustafsson was lining up. He was obviously frustrated with the game. Frederic was. He said something to Gustafsson. Gustafsson said something. Frederic won the face-off, gave him a cross-check because he was mad about something that happened before the face-off. And then they both kind of grabbed each other. Frederic said he didn't know if Gustafsson dropped first, but we essentially agreed to fight, and that's that. Again, according to Hockey Fights, Gustafsson had not participated in a fight before at the NHL level. Frederic, this was his 24th, and you could clearly see the disparity there in fighting prowess. Frederic threw the first punch. That's really all he needed, but there was more backlash because Frederic landed a couple more shots after dropping him with that first shot before the linesman could jump in. So the Bruins were down 6-1. And it's bad optics for Frederic, one of Boston's more skilled fighters, to drop a guy who has never fought at the NHL level before, especially a guy who is bigger or who he's bigger than. And that's why the Jets were so upset, in part because of the fact that there was this disparity in terms of the combatants. Frederic had asked Logan Stanley, who has 14 fights, to go in the first period. Frederic didn't care for a hit that was thrown by Stanley on David Pastrnak. The defenseman did not oblige Frederic, and it's maybe because the Jets were up 1-0 at that time. Stanley didn't want put his team behind. But later on, this is what happened, followed by a couple more fights that occurred as a result. Frederic said for his part, there's nothing he would change or regret. He would do it again every time. If someone wants to fight, I don't care if I don't care if they haven't fought before. If you want to fight in a hockey game, especially if you're frustrated and you're losing 6-1, I'm obviously going to do that. Now, this was a role reversal here. It was Frederic who was down 6-1, and you could see where a guy like Gustafsson maybe wanted to help his team get going, although he's not the guy to do that. Clearly, the Jets did not appreciate this fight. Adam Lowry didn't like it, so he challenged Nikita Zadorov to a fight. I believe there was another one involving Mark Kastelik. In the end, the Bruins took no issue with the fact that they showed this kind of fight. Joe Sacco said the guys played hard right to the end. That's all they're asking for. We just want to make sure there's no quit in our game, especially in the third period. Now, the Bruins did allow 5 goals in the third period. So if these fights were intended to bring them together to help salvage that game, it didn't work. If it was to show some emotion and pride, as Zadorov said after the game, he said, we were getting smoked. You've got to show some pride. Some guys stepped in. They fought. They showed their character. They showed there's no quit in the room. Everybody cares. Wasn't a good game. Didn't go their way at all, but you've got to show some emotion at the end. Show some pride for playing for the Boston Bruins. Now, if Gustafsson did in fact challenge Trent Frederic to a fight, and Frederic was pissed off because the Bruins were down 6-1 at that point, and he obliged, that's one thing. Dropping in with one punch and then throwing in a couple other shots, that's a bad look. And then dropping a guy with one punch who has never fought before is also a bit of a bad look, because it's a clear mismatch on paper, this bout. And if it was initiated by Frederic, he argues it was Gustafsson or he said, I would argue it was Gustafsson who asked him. There was some jawing back and forth. Maybe Gustafsson didn't really understand the implications of jawing with Trent Frederic. But for me, it's the wrong kind of fight, especially that mismatch. Frederic was being celebrated for dropping Gustafsson with one punch. I would have preferred the Bruins to put up more of a fight in terms of the scoreboard. You're down 6-1. Try to make it at least a bit more respectable. I get that fights can galvanize teams, can bring them together. But this one was a bit of an embarrassing look for the Bruins, especially that mismatch. And none of that fighting really matters at the end of the day. You lost 8-1 to one of the better teams in the NHL. You have yet to beat a playoff team under Joe Sacco. The pride should come from, actually trying to win games and not just pummeling opponents who have never fought before. And there'll be a big test tonight against the Seattle Kraken. We'll see if that emotion that was brought up from those fights will carry over into this game tonight against the Kraken. And it's a game we'll preview here as the podcast continues. But as a concluding thought here. I didn't like that fight per se. It was pretty dangerous. Yes, it was, you can look back at Rock'em Sock'em Don Cherry and say, oh, hockey's better off for those kind of incidents, but it's pretty dangerous. I didn't like the extra shots at the end, and especially if Gustafsson, if he challenged Frederic, that's one thing. That's one side of the story. But at the end of the day, it's a guy with a lot of fights against someone with no fights, and a pretty dangerous situation. So I can see why the Jets would be upset. And for me, I would have liked to see the Bruins push back more on the scoreboard as opposed to with their fists. And again, we'll see how they respond tonight against the Seattle Kraken, a game we will preview here as the podcast continues. I've been spending a lot of time on job sites lately, and there's no better place to look than Indeed. We're all driven for the search for better, whether it's candidates for your company or looking for a better opportunity. And when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. It's to match with Indeed. Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Boston Bruins. That's Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply, but if you need to hire, you need Indeed. Get in on the action this NFL weekend with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's look ahead now to tonight's game against the Seattle Kraken. One the Bruins are primed to take after that very disappointing loss to the Winnipeg Jets the other night. Maybe not disappointing in the fact that it wasn't necessarily expected, but the way that it went down, the 8-1 loss and the wrong kind of fight, arguably. Now, the Bruins and Kraken have played once before this season, a 2-0 shutout win back on November 3rd. If you remember, that was kind of a back-to-back shutout situation where the Bruins showed some signs of life under then head coach Jim Montgomery, but it wasn't sustained, and the Bruins went on to fire him shortly thereafter. Now, Seattle is 4-5-1 over their past 10 games. They have won 3 of their past 5, though, and have gotten points in 4 of the past 5. They've beaten the Hurricanes, the Islanders. They lost to the Devils, but then beat the Rangers, and then lost to Florida in a shootout in their previous game. The Bruins, 7-3-0 in their past 10. They've won 4 of their last 5, but of course, they're coming off this loss to Winnipeg, and their other loss was against Vancouver, the only other playoff team that they have faced here under Joe Sacco. Right now, the Kraken are outside the playoff picture. They're 3 points out of a wild card spot in the Western Conference, but they're closer to the bottom when you look at point percentage. They're only 500, 14-14-2, even 0 goal differential, and again, they're 4-5-1 over their past 10 games. Now, they do have a boatload of talent on this team. And they're led in scoring by Jared McCann, Chandler Stevenson, Oliver Bjorkstrand. But some of their younger guys are coming on a little bit, and I'm aware of this because I have two of them on my keeper fantasy team. Shane Wright, formerly very highly touted draft pick, up to 7 goals now after exploding for like 5 or 6 over his last 10 games. Matty Beniers has come on a little bit now with some assists over the last little bit. And in fact, Beniers leads the way with 5 assists over the past 5 games. Bjorkstrand leading the way with 6 points, 3 goals over the past 5 games for the Kraken. They've also benefited from getting Vince Dunn back in the lineup. He's played in 10 games. He's got 9 points and has really reinvigorated the offense there after coming back from injury. In net, they have Joey Decord, 12-6-2 with a .916 save percentage. Philip Grubauer as well, but I would expect it will be Decord who's in net. He's been the better goalie by far this season. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bruins go to Korpisalo after leaving Swayman in for all 8 goals against the other night. Korpisalo 6-2-1 with a .909 save percentage, much better numbers than Jeremy Swayman so far this season. Now, when it comes to special teams, neither club boasts units that are particularly special. The Bruins are still 32nd when it comes to power play prowess, 12.7%. Kraken, they rank 24th at 17.6%. Boston's penalty kill is 23rd, taking a bit of a drop after allowing 3 power play goals the other night against Winnipeg. Seattle's is 19th at 78.9%. When it comes to offense, defense, the Kraken ranks 17th, allowing 2.97 goals per game. They're 15th in goals allowed at 2.97. I mentioned they have a 0 goal differential, 90 goals for, 90 goals against. So even 2.97 goals for and against per game. The Bruins are scoring only 2.53 goals per game, and they're allowing 3.17 goals per game. So it could be a fairly even matchup tonight. And again, you look at the Bruins' schedule. They are on this 5-game road trip. They lost to Winnipeg. They've got Vancouver, Calgary, and Edmonton all coming up. All 3 of those teams are currently in playoff spots. Well, technically, Vancouver and Calgary are tied with 33 points. But if you look at point percentage in the Western Conference, those 3 teams are in the top 8. 6th, 7th, and 8th to be exact. So it's going to be a tough go for the Bruins following this game. And so if you're looking at a game they really need on this road trip, it's this one. The Bruins fell back behind the New York Rangers, who won last night or against Buffalo. They're just slightly behind at 550 Boston's point percentage. The Rangers, they're at 554. And so you really can't afford to drop too many games against teams below you in the standings. The Flyers are right behind the Bruins. The Senators are back up to 500 after winning big last night. And you still have teams like the Islanders, Blue Jackets, Penguins, maybe even the Red Wings kicking around there. And so, again, this is a game the Bruins really have to take tonight against Seattle. And I would imagine it will be Joonas Korpisalo getting the call in net, as he's been the stronger goalie and might give the Bruins the better chance to win here tonight. Although they really do need to get Jeremy Swayman back up to form as well. And to his credit, before the Winnipeg game, he had been. So that's a quick preview of tonight's game. To finish today's episode, we're going to look at some news and notes pertaining to our Bruins, and we'll discuss that here as the podcast continues. You can run your game all season long with Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to play daily fantasy sports, and it gives you the best opportunity to cash out quickly and easily. So make your holidays bigger and brighter with PrizePicks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. Right now, you can win up to 1,000 times your money on PrizePicks, and they now offer MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Join now because this holiday season, PrizePicks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. All you have to do is download PrizePicks and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download PrizePicks, use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Run your game all season long with PrizePicks. Those of you who follow along on YouTube will have seen the bonus short I posted yesterday after it was announced that Alec Regula had been taken off waivers by the Edmonton Oilers. Now, the 24-year-old had yet to play this season after sustaining a knee injury over the summer. He did not participate in training camp or preseason and was a non-roster designation when the regular season began. The Bruins activated him, put him on waivers for the purpose of assignment to the AHL, and he was plucked by the Edmonton Oilers. Now, Regula spent all of last season in the minors and was part of the Taylor Hall-Nick Foligno trade back in 2023, where he was acquired alongside Ian Mitchell. He led the AHL last season with a plus 36 rating, 4 goals, 26 points in 55 games. And the Bruins were no doubt expecting that he would fly through waivers and he'd start up back in Providence this season. Now, he was initially a third-round pick of the Detroit Red Wings in 2018. He is a big body who can chip in offensively. He's a two-way threat and still had yet to prove that he could play at the NHL level. He was kind of in line for a recall along with Mitchell, guys who could come up in a pinch. And now he could get a real shot here with the Edmonton Oilers. They have a pair of open roster spots, and he's probably their 8th defenseman right now. Will compete for depth minutes with the likes of Ty Emberson, Travis Dermott, Troy Stetcher. It should be noted that Regula was a teammate in junior with Evan Bouchard, who's a prominent Edmonton Oilers blue liner. I followed both of them actually when I was doing some hockey writing back in 2018. And yeah, Regula has some upside. I can see why the Bruins asked for him in that trade. Unfortunately, the waiver wire being such as it is, you never know when teams are going to have a need. And if it's just bad timing, the Oilers picking them up and the Bruins losing that asset on the waiver wire for nothing in return, which is unfortunate. So all I have to show for that Hall-Foligno trade is the cap space they accrued, as well as the Ian Mitchell, who is still in the AHL. Another piece of news from yesterday, Kevin Shattenkirk announcing his retirement. He, of course, played last season for the Boston Bruins. He was drafted 14th overall by the Avs in 2007 after a nice stint at BU. He didn't last long, though, as he was traded to the St. Louis Blues. And he, of course, helped win a couple Stanley Cups over the course of his career. And Shattenkirk was not signed to another contract this past summer after a decent season last year with the Bruins. He played for a bunch of teams, including the Blues, the Capitals, the Rangers, Lightning, and the Ducks. And he did win one Stanley Cup as a member of the Lightning in 2020. So congrats to Shattenkirk on a fantastic career, and we wish you all the best in retirement. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention was the play of Matt Poitras down in Providence. This guy is on an absolute heater right now. He's got 11 points in 12 games for the Providence Bruins. And if Boston fails on this road trip, then I don't see any reason why he should not be brought up to see what he can do at the NHL level once again. Bring up Patra, bring up Georgi Merkulov, bring up Fabian Lysell. Even Max Jones has been playing a bit better down in Providence. If things don't pan out over the course of this road trip, make some changes, bring up some young guys, see what you have moving forward in them at the NHL level, and kind of look at this season as a retooling year. We can discuss that more as the days go on and based on Boston's results, but it's clear to me that this team, even if they squeak into the playoffs, is not a contender. Perhaps it's a good year to bottom out, get a high draft pick, and regroup for next year. But that's a kind of a long-term projection here. Tonight, they're playing the Seattle Kraken. We'll see what they can do if they can get back on track ahead of 3 tougher games coming up here. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me here on today's episode. Please do take care of yourselves, friends. Take care of each other. Have a great Thursday. We'll be back tomorrow to recap tonight's game against the Kraken. And please do check out Locked On Fantasy Hockey next. Steal and Flip will give you all the information you need to get an upper hand in your league this week. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. Talk to you later, friends.